Welcome to the Better Together podcast. I'm your host, Kyla, and today we have a very interesting topic, as I think all the topics are interesting, hopefully, that I hit on. But before we get into the topic and the journey to the heart entry, I wanted to give a shout out to my cousin Kobe, who is an amazing musician. He did my intro and outro music, so if you noticed a difference in music, that's why. He's incredible, and I will link all of his information below in the description. I highly recommend giving him a listen. I believe he also produces music as well as makes music, and especially if you like the intro and outro music, please go check him out. He is amazing, not just as a musician, but as a person as well. So let's get into it. This journey to the heart entry is called Discover Your Own Truth. No truth is ours until we make it our own. All the truths in the world don't matter unless and until we discover them to be true for ourselves. That's what the journey is about. An insight, a lesson, a new belief is at the end of each adventure. Whether that adventure happens in a moment, an hour, a day, or a year. The lessons doesn't come from books, although books might help along the way. It doesn't come from classes or lectures or well-meaning friends. The lessons we're seeking comes from inside us, from our hearts, from our deep, abiding connection to consciousness and the truth. It springs quietly from within as we notice one day that we believe something new, something different, something more free, more fun, and more life-enhancing than what we believed before. For a moment, we may turn back and say, "Why didn't I know that? Why didn't I see that before?" Then we step back on our path, laugh, and go on our way, understanding that is why we are really here. Not to know everything in advance, but to allow ourselves to go freely through all the lessons that teach us all we came here to learn. You are on a journey of discovery. Find out what's true for you. Remember, a truth isn't yours until it rings true for you. So I liked this entry, as I like all the entries I pick, because I feel like it kind of relates to the topic today. We're going to be talking about New Year's, and specifically the New Year's blues, where maybe the New Year's doesn't feel like a reset for you, or it doesn't feel like the best time of year for you. I kind of just wrote out a stream of consciousness, and I'm going to plan on reading that. And this is probably going to be a shorter episode. Definitely is going to be a shorter episode. But I hope that you guys relate to this, and I hope that it helps anybody out there who is feeling similar to how I feel this year, or just how you generally feel in this moment in your life. So here we go. This is going to be a very candid episode. Not that all of my episodes aren't candid, but I guess this one is a little less planned and sort of just a stream of consciousness on my feelings, thoughts, and advice on life right now and the new year. And if you're on visual and can't tell already, I am reading my notes that I typed up because it was easier for me to write out all my thoughts on this topic. I will say I do tend to try to be a bit more in the moment and not read from a script, but I wouldn't think of this as a script. Like I said, it's a stream of consciousness. And I also want to mention that this is very last minute because I am a very type A personality, which if you know me, you know that. I like to plan ahead of things, and this, I literally wrote this out today. It's Friday. This is going out Sunday at 12 a.m. I'm going to make sure it goes out. I'm making myself do this. Not that I don't love to do this, but as you'll hear as I read this, I'm not in the best place mentally. So let's continue reading on. So typically the mark of a new year is a reset for me. It's the time I tend to reset my routines, like daily working out, journaling, goal setting, etc. And for a lot of people, this is a time of fresh starts, celebrations, and resolutions. But for others, it can be a difficult time where you may be grieving, feeling depressed, or just generally feeling stuck. And I want to validate anyone feeling that way. I really and truly see you. I too am in a weird headspace right now, where I'm not personally feeling like my best self. It was actually really difficult for me to get this episode out, and I'm recording this at the very last minute, but I do want to try and stay as consistent as possible. I've actually been in a really low place lately in my personal life, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of it all, but I wanted to talk about how sometimes the new year doesn't feel like that reset that this time tends to mean for a lot of people. But I figured I could give some unsolicited advice on how I'm handling this time of year, and just generally why this time of year can feel tough to get through. The new year tends to bring on a lot of pressure to feel happy and to start fresh. I think social media plays a huge part in this influence. It tends to amplify those feelings of needing to feel happy, needing there to be that fresh start. And that's something that tends to make me feel lonely in a way. And I'm not sure if that makes total sense. And it's not to say that I don't love to see all of my family and friends end of the year wrap photos. But I think there is an overwhelming amount of this content on social media, on top of people's resolutions and goal setting with what next year is going to bring. So something I've been trying to do is limit the amount of time I'm spending on social media apps like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. And although I will admit it's a little tough when I'm trying to maintain a podcast and grow my following, but it is something that has helped me a lot. I also understand that with today's technology, most of us have scrolling addictions and whatnot, so it's definitely not one of those things that's easier said than done. It's definitely one of those things that's easier said than done. Something I think about often, which my mom really hit on in the last episode about grief, is that it can be very difficult to reflect back on past years. It can bring up those feelings of grief, loneliness, and feeling stuck in the same place despite it being a new year. But that doesn't mean you did not grow. I think it's really important to even look at the small things. Like maybe it was hard to get out of bed one day, but you did, and you took a shower. Those are all small things to look at and be proud of yourself for. That is progress. Now, I also don't want to take away from those who have had a great year and are reflecting on a year or years of major growth. I think that's incredible, and it can also be very inspiring for those who are struggling during this time. So there are definitely two sides to it, and I want to make sure I validate that side of it as well. During this time, I tend to isolate a lot, but that's when it becomes even more important to reach out to the people who support you and who you trust. That's something I've actually been doing a lot lately, asking for extra support, which is not easy for me. I think I also mentioned this in the last episode that I tend to feel like a burden to my friends and family when I am needy, or when I'm in a needy state, which is definitely not the right word to use, but in a state where I need extra support. And I have to remind myself that I am not a burden. And if it was one of my friends or family members reaching out, I wouldn't think twice about them being a burden. I would want to do anything in my power to be supportive and helpful. Feeling tired or having a lack of energy is normal too. Sometimes it's nice to get that extra sleep in and can even be healing, but also not good to go overboard. It's also important to remember that when negative self-talk comes up in your head, to try and be aware of those thoughts and reverse them. An example of this would be, I wasn't productive today, and changing it to, I got out of bed today. I brushed my teeth. I got ready. That was productive. Or today I needed a rest day, so that was productive. Things like that. I have to stop myself all the time from overthinking and negative thinking. This brings me to the pressure of having New Year's resolutions. I personally don't believe in New Year's resolutions, and I don't have any judgment towards people who do believe in this. But I think it's more important to focus on intentions rather than resolutions. An example is, I want to be kinder to myself and my body, rather than to lose a certain amount of weight. Also, January may be the start of a new year, but that doesn't have to define when you reset. A reset can happen at any point of the year. I would also consider thinking about what a reset really means to you. When you are feeling down, instead of trying to suppress those feelings, try and sit in those feelings. A good friend once told me that it's important to allow yourself to feel all the feelings, and that's the only way to get through it. As a society, we are taught to believe that when we are sad, hurt, in pain, that we need to get rid of those feelings as fast as possible. But unfortunately, that's not how it works. And this is another thing that is way easier said than done. Another good friend told me that it can help to write your thoughts as they come hour by hour or even minute by minute, because feelings are constantly changing. But writing these thoughts down can be a really nice reminder to help show you your own progress, or even just understand your thought process. Something I've said in multiple episodes is to prioritize self-care and be gentle with yourself. Being gentle to myself is something I struggle with, but that goes along with negative self-talk and learning how to reframe your thoughts so they are more positive and nice. Self-care practices can be small. Things like taking a short walk, making your bed, or cooking yourself something. Self-care is really just what brings you comfort. Something that I learned in therapy is to look at myself as a little girl. And I think about how I would treat that little girl. What would I want for that little girl? And how would I help that little girl? That thought process has helped me become nicer to myself and even understand some of my needs better, because that is my inner child. So the last piece of unsolicited advice I'll give is to try and look at yourself as that younger you. And how would you treat that younger self? What does that younger self need from you today? So I wrote that out, and I know this episode is way shorter than usual, but I've been really going through it lately. And I wrote this out not only to help anybody and everybody listening to this, but also a reminder to myself too. Like I said, writing things down is a reminder of your progress. It's a reminder of where you're at. It's a reminder of where your headspace is at. And I also think, I was just talking to my mom on FaceTime, and she was with one of her good friends. And they both had mentioned how being in a tough place and feelings of grief and sadness and depression are all temporary. Feelings are temporary. That's why I mentioned that documenting or writing down your thoughts hour by hour or minute by minute, it's because your thoughts and your feelings are changing, always, constantly. And the feeling of not feeling good or feeling depressed or feeling sad or feeling hurt or grief or whatever it may be, it's temporary and it's going to go away. And that's not just a reminder for you guys, that's a reminder for me as well. And so I am being very vulnerable in this episode, and it's very scary. So I want to ask for a non-judgment zone. I think that's what this podcast is about. It's about creating community, and it's about creating a safe space for people to be able to share. So I know this episode was quite a ramble, but I hope it can be helpful for others who feel similar to me or are going through their own struggles, whatever it may be, and whether it relates to the new year or not, it doesn't matter. Know that you're not alone. I know I already said this, but I really and truly see you, and I understand you. I may not be in your shoes, but we all know what it's like to struggle, and you're not alone. I'd also love your guys' feedback on the podcast thus far, whether it's this episode independently or any episode. If you have your own advice on this topic or your own stories to share, or you just have general questions for me, please feel free to reach out. I'm always an open ear to listen, and I will try to give my best advice as I can, but I'm not a professional. But I really want to connect with my audience and hopefully, like I said, create some sort of community. So for those of you who have reached out and who are listening, thank you. Thank you. It really means a lot, and I'm excited to see where this continues to go. Thank you so much once again for listening. Please remember to rate, like, comment, subscribe to my YouTube. All of it helps. You can follow me on my personal Instagram, which is Kyla_Milberger. You can follow me on the Better Together podcast Instagram, which is the_BetterTogether_podcast. You can send in questions, comments, concerns, whatever it may be, to thebettertogetherpod@gmail.com. And please don't forget to check out my cousin Kobe's incredible music, all linked below in the description. And I will see